Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Godspeed Today. I'm your host, Riley Roseby. It is just me today, and I'm excited to talk about a few things. The world has been crazy. Powell had his FOMC meeting today, left the rates unchanged, a big nothing burger. The market had a few little minor reactions, but nothing crazy, nothing to call home about. We do have war escalations increasing in between Iran and Israel. Horrible to see. And we're going to kind of take a look at a few charts, but really the biggest thing is when in doubt, zoom out. And there's a lot of uncertainty. If you're kind of keeping an eye on the headlines, you might be getting a little emotionally volatile yourself. But the market, as we could take a look here at the S&P 500 volatility index, is relatively muted. We had a little bit of a pop last Friday when missiles began to get exchanged between Israel and Iran, but it's nothing crazy. It's nothing like what we saw in April, kind of with the tariff talk. And, for all intents and purposes, the market doesn't really seem to care about the war. Now, when in doubt, zoom out. This is something I repeat to myself nearly every single day. And what we're seeing here is relative to the S&P 500, technology is knocking on the door of all-time highs. We're talking about AI, we're talking about flying cars, we're talking about autonomous vehicles, we're talking about space exploration, all the cutting edge technologies. And we're testing these levels that we first saw at the peak of the dot-com bubble in 1999. We had a nice little retest there, kind of at the end of last year. That was a little bit of a spike, faded that level, and now we're back at the scene of the crime. So if technology is going to outperform and break out to a new all-time high, that's really, really exciting for the AI-infused paradigm shift that we're experiencing. So the picks and shovels of AI, semiconductors. Now, a lot of the charts, actually, the rest of the charts I have today are going to be these line charts. I don't typically look at the line charts. However, I like to look at the line charts when there's a lot of volatility and emotional kind of instability, because it clears out the noise. It provides a much better signal for us. And this SMH, the VanEck Semiconductor ETF, is pressing upon all-time highs. Like I just said, semiconductors are the picks and shovels of technology. There's hundreds of semiconductors in our smartphones. I don't even know how many hundreds, maybe thousands of semiconductors in my computer that I'm talking to you now. This is the lifeblood of technology. And if semiconductors are making an all-time high, what do we think is going to be coming for risk assets? Do we think risk assets are going to be kind of taking a downturn, going risk lower, or are we going to be going higher? My bet is on the latter, that semiconductors are going to be making a new all-time high. When is this going to happen? It's kind of, anyone's best guess as far as the timing goes. But just looking at the underlying trend here, we're going from the bottom left to the top right, which is exactly what we want to see. Now, if semiconductors are the picks and shovels of this AI-infused gold rush, so to speak, cybersecurity is our vaults. This is our little treasure chest protecting these technologies. And this might be one of the cleanest from the bottom left to the top right charts I've ever seen. This is the First Trust NASDAQ Cybersecurity ETF, ticker CIBR. Some of the largest holdings include CrowdStrike and Cloudflare, and this thing is just absolutely marching up into the right. Now, we are living in an ever-increasing digital world. Do we think cybersecurity is going to have a greater impact on our future, or is going to have a less meaningful impact on our future? My bet is on the former. Cybersecurity is essential. It's more essential now than ever before. And we're seeing that play out in price. Such a clean trend here. I wouldn't want to bet against anything cybersecurity for the sheer fact that we are plugging into the digital world more than ever. Now, kind of going a little bit further on the risk spectrum, this ARK Innovation ETF, and the top 5 holdings include Tesla, Roku, Roblox, Coinbase, and the recently IPO'd Hotshot Circle. This name is having a beautiful base. We all remember the crazy move following COVID in the ARK names. Cathie Wood was being worshipped. Everybody thought she was the next Warren Buffett. A few months later, she is losing more shareholder value than any other fund manager, and people are mocking her. Well, after about 2.5 years of really going nowhere, we can see we're creating a series of higher lows and higher highs. Now, we haven't broken out of those Q1 highs here, but we're getting close. And over the last few weeks, we've seen different speculative pockets pop. Do we think this ARK Innovation ETF is going to resume the underlying trend of up and to the right, or do we think this is going to roll over? Again, we're just looking for the heuristics, and I'm using today's program really to try and kind of provide a sober view of where we're at. When we see war escalations increasing, when we see Fed talking about rate cuts, not actually executing, just having a whole bunch of nothing burgers, there's a lot of mixed emotions that go in with that. And I think it's really important for us to take a step back and zoom out and understand what is really at play. So we are still in the early innings of autonomous driving. And I wrote a post yesterday about Waymo and how it's expanding its coverage in the California, San Francisco Bay areas, and Los Angeles. We have a couple maps here. So this is downtown San Francisco. We could see the dark shaded areas. This was the previous former map that Waymo was operating in. This light blue area is the new areas that it's going to be exploring. We have Silicon Valley here, Palo Alto Airport, Milano Park, and then down here in Los Angeles. Now, I do want to note the San Francisco Airport, SFO, is not included in this first map. And that is going to be a major unlock. We all know the amount of people that go to and from the airport once Waymo begins operating in these areas. It's going to be massive. It's going to be massive. And I really want us to understand where we're at in this cycle. We are in maybe inning 1 or inning 2. And over the last year, Waymo has increased its weekly paid trips by 5x. Now, I want us to really understand what that means. You know, we didn't double, we didn't triple, we didn't quadruple. We're up 500% year over year in weekly paid trips from Waymo. And this is just another broad heuristic as far as where is technology going? Are we advancing? Are we declining? How are things looking from the major underlying trend? Tesla. Now, Elon has pushed back the date for its robo-taxi service a couple times. You know, he's teased it out a handful of years ago, didn't fulfill, didn't deliver. Earlier this year, he said, you know, early June, we had a date like June 12th, June 13th. That came and passed. The new date that we're hearing is June 22nd. Tesla's taking a little bit different approach to Waymo. They're not using LiDAR, and they are just using sensors on their vehicles. And if you haven't had the opportunity to ride in a full self-driving Tesla, I highly recommend it. Just the experience of riding in an autonomous vehicle, even if there is somebody in the driver's seat, it is quite the profound experience. It's really one of those magic moments where you're like, wow, you know, technology is here. It is changing the world. And this chart, again, we're going back to these line charts. We're trying to take out some of the noise of what's all happening in the last week or so. Up and to the right. Tesla really hasn't done much since it had that epic move in 2020, 2021. And we have just been basing. You know, Tesla's going to be rolling out its robo-taxis maybe on the 22nd. Maybe it's going to be pushed back. They're going to start with about 10 to 12 vehicles in Austin, slowly deploy them. But the one thing I want us to remember is Tesla has scalability that Waymo does not, right? Tesla has vehicles all over the world. When their full self-driving robo-taxi service is going to really go online, they're going to be able to ship it to all these vehicles that are stationed all over the world. If you own a Tesla, you know, it's going to be the Airbnb model where you're going to be able to roll out your Tesla, let it go make money for you, delivering robo-taxi services while you're at home. You know, while you're at home, probably working on your computer, you have some cybersecurity protecting the work that it is you're doing. So again, I really am just trying to put together these major themes. We're seeing these major themes coming in. And just yesterday, you know, you guys know how I love talking about flying cars. I think advanced air mobility is going to be an unlock for humanity that we have really never seen in our lifetime. You know, we're all old enough to remember like the early days of our cell phones. I don't think anybody who's alive today remembers when the Model T came out and when we transitioned from the horse and buggy to the automobile. But we are alive and well today for the emergence of a new technology with advanced air mobility. And the FAA, in partnership with Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, came together to put a roadmap for advanced air mobility aircraft type certification. Now, this is the big hurdle within these eVTOLs and really getting them deployed is these vehicles need to get type certification. They have yet to do so. This is another thing that continues, the timeline continues to get pushed back. But what this roadmap really means is that there's going to be some congruency as far as certification standards within these 5 countries. Once again, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the United States. The one thing I was a little surprised to see, though, is that the UAE is not involved in this roadmap. It's been suspected that the UAE is going to deploy these air taxis, these eVTOLs, before anyone else. And I'm a little surprised that they weren't participating in this kind of, broad, congruent certification standard that the FAA has been toting. With that being said, the flying car composite, Archer and Joby, is knocking on the door of all-time highs. We have on the far left here, this is when these companies SPAC'd, IPO'd. That was in the SPAC craze of 2021. Hadn't done anything. They got absolutely slaughtered in 22 and 23. Continued to just move sideways in 24 before Q4 last year, and they really started making that move. Again, they had a nice little downturn in the beginning part of the year, and now they're back to the scene of the crime. And what I want us to remember, in going back to this roadmap that the FAA and these other countries have put together, is these are all just little heuristics, right? These are little accolades of where we are going in this new world. Flying cars, autonomous vehicles, space exploration. This is where technology is trending. And if we go back and reference that first chart, it would be the second chart, we could see technology is on the verge of breaking out. So just with all these heuristics, do we really want to bet against technology? Do we really want to bet that the flying cars are not going to take flight within the next few years? And what does that mean for Archer and Joby? What does that mean for robo-taxis, autonomous driving? These are the major underlying themes. And I know I have a little bit of a short program there today because this is the majority of what I got. But I really wanted to take this moment, take this opportunity, to provide kind of a zoomed out view of where things are going. I know it's really easy to get bogged down and in the weeds with all the news headlines when we see horrific things happening, like war breaking out and tensions escalating rather than de-escalating. But as investors, we need to maintain a steady head, be calm, remember where the direction of the underlying trends are, and invest accordingly. Folks, that is all I have for you today. Tomorrow the markets are closed. Friday should be another exciting day. And fingers crossed, I'm rooting for him that Elon deploys his robo-taxi services starting Sunday. We'll see you next week.